Time didn't feel like this before. A year used to feel long. Now, it disappears. Months pass without leaving a trace, entire seasons blur together. And the strange part is, nothing about time itself has changed. So why does it feel like it is speeding up? Childhood felt different. A single year felt long. Events stood out. Days add texture. Moments were easier to remember. But as time goes on, something shifts. Weeks blur together, months pass without clear distinction. Even significant events begin to feel compressed in memory. It becomes harder to separate one period from another, and eventually, a full year can pass without leaving a strong impression. Most people explain this in simple ways. Life becomes busier. Responsibilities increase, there is less time to slow down. And while that is partly true, it doesn't fully explain the experience, because even when life is full, it can still feel empty in hindsight. And even when time is used productively, it can still feel like it disappeared. So the question becomes, what is actually changing? The experience of time is closely tied to novelty. New experiences create stronger mental markers. They stand out, they create distinct memories, and those memories give time a sense of depth. But as life becomes more familiar, the brain begins to compress information. Repeated routines, similar environments, predictable patterns. This requires less attention to process, so the brain records them with less detail. And when fewer details are stored, time feels shorter in retrospect. This leads to an important realization. Time doesn't feel fast while it is happening. It feels fast when looking back, because the mind is trying to reconstruct a period with limited information, fewer distinct moments, so the brain fills the gaps quickly, and what was once a long stretch of time feels like a brief sequence. Modern life intensifies this effect. Days become structured around repetition. Work, screens, familiar routines, similar interactions. Even entertainment becomes predictable, and while each day may feel full, it often lacks distinct variation, so the brain stops marking time clearly. It blends one day into the next, and over time, entire weeks or months lose their uniqueness. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A life filled with repetition can feel short, even if it is long, not because time is limited, but because it is not being experienced in a way that creates lasting impressions. The brain doesn't measure life by duration, it measures it by difference, and when everything begins to feel the same, time begins to collapse. This doesn't require dramatic change, but it does require variation, new environments, new experiences, new challenges, anything that forces the brain to pay attention again, because attention creates memory, and memory gives time its depth. The more distinct moments there are, the longer life feels in retrospect. Time is not something that simply passes, it is something that is experienced through awareness, through novelty, through difference. And while it cannot be slowed down in a literal sense, it can feel slower when it is filled with moments that stand out, moments that are noticed, remembered, processed. Life doesn't suddenly become shorter, it becomes less distinct, less varied, less memorable, and that is what creates the feeling of acceleration. Years that once felt expansive begin to feel compressed, not because time changed, but because the way it is experienced did. And once that is understood, something becomes clear. The speed of life is not only determined by time itself, but by how much of it is actually noticed.